Clear Media's Mining Weekly is interviewing Craig Miller, the CEO of Valterra Platinum, who has just returned from the Hydrogen Council's Global CEO Summit 2025 in South Korea. Hi, Craig. It's great to be able to chat to you on your return from the Seoul Summit, which Mining Weekly understands was attended by more than 200 CEOs and senior executives from the world's leading hydrogen businesses. How good is a meeting like this for the demand outlook for platinum group metals?
It is a really encouraging and great week to be in Seoul together with some of the other CEOs, particularly focused around creating that hydrogen production and also then the demand segments. The outlook for PGMs, as you know, PGMs, where we see the opportunity is really in PEM electrolyzers, so in the production of green hydrogen, and then also in mobility, in fuel cell electric vehicles. And I think it's fair to say that there is certainly a lot of supply and investment going into hydrogen, and that's very, very key. But then also importantly, then looking for those demand use cases. And there's certainly opportunities out there, and we just need to see those translate into real outcomes. But I'm really encouraged, having spent the week in Seoul and having the opportunity to go around and travel around the city in a fuel cell electric vehicle, the Hyundai Nexo. That was really, really impressive. It's a really nifty little car, and it was great to see the opportunity just in terms of how that's translating into tangible people mobility, and the opportunity for me also to see some refueling of the hydrogen into these fuel cell electric vehicles in Seoul, right outside the People's Assembly, which is the equivalent of their national parliament. There's a refueling station. So it was really, I think, just demonstrated for me just the importance of hydrogen and hydrogen in the Korean economy and how they see it as a step towards decarbonization and supporting the energy transition.
And Craig, I noted that a strong call was made, and I'm sure you'd have heard that call if it was made, to build the global hydrogen ecosystem faster and to unlock commercial scale demand by 2030. Do you get the impression that the call will be heeded?
Martin, there's a lot of work to be done into recognizing that call. So both from a policy perspective in certain jurisdictions of the world, in standardizing some of the standards in terms of hydrogen production and transportation and its utilization. And I think that's really, really key. But I think what was very apparent by the participants, and as you've said, effectively, the market capitalization of members of the Hydrogen Council, sort of almost $9 trillion. So really some of the largest global companies participate at the Hydrogen Council. I think the real momentum around hydrogen is certainly there, and the opportunity that we still see its role to play in decarbonization is key. And ultimately that will translate into demand segments. And so I think there's a lot of optimism around that. But it is important that we start to see that translating into tangible output from now until the end of the decade and into 2035. So that was a key takeaway from the board, is that we needed to see that translating into meaningful demand. And we can see some pathways towards that. But it is going to take a lot of concerted effort, working with governments in private-public partnerships, working with others in those ecosystems, similar to what Valterra Platinum has done. Where we've sort of used the taxi fleet in Berlin. You'll recall that we did that sort of for 18 months now. So really starting to demonstrate some of those ecosystems and how they can translate into tangible benefit. So that's well underway. But there's still a lot of work ahead of us.
And Craig, did the hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle, that FCEV transport that was laid on for everyone, did it provide a lot of visible evidence? Did it provide enough visible evidence to convince you that competitive commercialization at scale deserves to be put to the test globally?
I think, yes, it did, Martin. I think, we've been saying at Valterra Platinum for quite some time is the energy transition will be taking place. I mean, there's no doubt that we're going to need to deal with climate change, and we are going to need to decarbonize. And that there will be a role for various forms of technology, be that battery electric vehicles, be that fuel cell electric vehicles, be that hybrid vehicles. and other forms of transportation, there's absolutely a role to play. And I think what I was able to witness in Seoul is that if you have the concerted effort around investing in the infrastructure, if you have the appropriate policies to support decarbonization and to support various technologies that you can use in that particular value chain, the opportunity for fuel cell electric vehicles and hydrogen and green hydrogen specifically is very, very real. And so that was really encouraging. So not only seeing the motor vehicles, but seeing the buses, seeing the taxi fleets. And, as I said, I had the opportunity to be at the refueling station at the People's Assembly of South Korea. And what was really key for me is that actually just the number of motor vehicles that were lining up to be refueled. So, a little bit different to what you have with a battery vehicle, more similar to what we have with an internal combustion engine vehicle. You can refuel a fuel cell electric vehicle in about 5 to 6 minutes.
And Craig, from a personal point of view, tell us a bit more about that ride and drive experience and the refueling of the Hyundai FCEV you were driving around in.
Yes, certainly. So it's incredibly smooth. It's pretty nippy, as I said a little bit earlier. So a little bit similar to internal combustion engine vehicles. The acceleration from 0 to 60 or a little bit higher is pretty quick. Obviously, very quiet. But the real opportunity for me is because what we haven't been able to see at scale, except for in China, is the opportunity around the refueling. And so certainly, I think there's over 200 refueling stations in South Korea. And so we got to see one of those at the People's Assembly. And it was really good. I think for me, it just demonstrated that this opportunity is absolutely real. It's going to be applicable in certain jurisdictions. It's going to be applicable for certain modes of transportation. And therefore, as a result of that, there is going to be a need for platinum specifically and iridium in these fuel cell electric vehicles into the future and in the electrolysis. So very encouraged and very excited about what that opportunity presents for us ahead.
So Craig, as a South African, I'm always looking at the platinum group metals. How much platinum group metal, for instance, is in a Nexo SUV, particularly the one that took you around Seoul?
The loadings of PGMs in the Nexo are not necessarily disclosed by Hyundai. You can appreciate that some of that is proprietary technology. But what we do know is that the Department of Energy in the US has said that you probably need roughly around about 12.5 grams of platinum in a fuel cell electric vehicle into the future. And that would be sort of a thrifted level from where the current levels are. So so pretty meaningful in terms of the amount of PGMs that you could see in a fuel cell electric vehicle into the future.
And Craig, I also spotted some buses. I believe there were 6 fuel cell electric vehicle buses that were made available. Did you catch any of them?
I did. So I had the opportunity of being in both the bus and in the Nexo. The bus experience was pretty luxurious, but also pretty standard. And so I think just really what the important part that sort of it came across for me is Seoul or Greater Seoul as a city of 23 million people. You absolutely need to deal with emissions. In terms of just the mobility of people around the city. And therefore, a fuel cell electric vehicle, car or bus or taxi fleet, etc., they will all be able to support that. And that was really sort of apparent in terms of just driving around, in terms of just, the opportunity around reducing emissions, particularly in urban cities, and therefore, improving quality of life for all the inhabitants.
And Craig, I also noticed some deals going on there. I looked at Hyundai Motor Group and Air Liquide in pictures, and they were announcing their strategic partnership at the summit. Do you envisage that this planned expansion is likely to uplift things and get more material viability going?
Martin, this is an opportunity to bring together some of the largest companies that are particularly focused around hydrogen specifically as well, just in terms of the utilization and demand creation for that. So this is one of those demonstration concepts in terms of just, where you can see that partnership. I think that was really important, is coming away from the summit, is the opportunity not only for the private sector, but for the public sector to really work together in a collaborative way in order to ensure that you continue to create the demand for hydrogen into the future.
Craig, I want to look at South Africa now. We're hoping to develop the Rainbow Hydrogen Corridor project, and rainbow is spelled RHYNBOW. So very interestingly, and it goes from Limpopo through Gauteng to Richards Bay. What did you come across at the summit that could conceivably help Project Rainbow to secure just energy transition? And I'm talking about jet funding status and get the whole project off the ground.
Yes, I think it's important, Martin, that we're able to demonstrate that the bankable feasibility on hydrogen projects in South Africa actually works. So to this end, we are working with our partners to ensure that the projects are bankable and to get that parity in terms of the competing technologies in the shortest term as possible. And I think, what I saw in Seoul together with Simon Boloy from Sasol, is, and what we've experienced in other parts of the world is creating that ecosystem, creating those demand segments, creating that supply is feasible, but there's a lot of work to be done. And so we'll continue to progress the feasibility study on Rainbow together with our partners.
Oh, Craig, you've always been a numbers man, so yeah, that bankable. and now that you're back, how do you find driving in your Toyota Mirai, also a fuel cell electric vehicle?
Yeah, so Martin, I need to just clarify some sort of misconception around there. So I don't quite have a Toyota Mirai just yet. That vehicle still belongs to Toyota, and we'll be speaking to them around how we can potentially have one for Valterra Platinum. But the two demonstration vehicles that we had at the B20 still belong to Toyota. So we'll say we'll just watch this space, just give us a little bit more time to sort that out, and particularly then working through some of the infrastructure and the logistics around the refueling of that.
Yeah, refueling. Well, I was going to say, you'll have to dispense the Sasol hydrogen into your Mirai, and I presume Air Products dispenser will help you with that, or are there other plans?
No, so certainly, I think it is definitely a partnership, and I think all of us are going to need to work in partnership in terms of how we then continue to prove the test case. But we certainly demonstrated what's feasible, and we just got to take that feasibility a little bit more further. So I think what we need to do is just wait until we get into the new year, Martin, until we make some further announcements in this particular space.
And Craig, what's the big takeaway?
I certainly think that the hydrogen and the industry, specifically around that, is moving forward. Maybe not fast enough as what we all sort of wanted, but it is a large snowball, and it is certainly starting to gain momentum. And serious capital is being deployed. I think it's about $110 billion has been invested in hydrogen projects over the last 5 years. I think 35 billion in the last 12 months alone. That's sort of a 10x increase in the investment in hydrogen. So that snowball is gaining momentum. But I think what we need to now start to see is that with supporting the infrastructure that has been built, is then that translating into demand. And that's where a lot of that focus, together with the policy support, is really aimed at enabling that demand environment, and such that you can then support decarbonization and addressing climate change. And I'm really pleased in terms of the positive role that PGMs will continue to play, and Valterra Platinum will continue to play in supporting that.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly, speaking to Valterra Platinum CEO Craig Miller, who has just returned from the PGM Enhancing Hydrogen Council's Global CEO Summit 2025 in Seoul, the capital of South Korea.